Hi everyone. This video is a book review about a book that I have had since 2021, and the title of this book is Images of the Beatles, and it has commentary by author Tim Hill with photographs from the Daily Mail. Now, as I stated, I bought this book in 2021, September 2021, to be, I guess, more specific. I originally purchased it because I wanted to have a collection of books to read for the anniversary of John Lennon's tragic passing. I didn't have enough time this year, or it slipped my mind, to get a book in particular about John Lennon specifically, so I decided that this book was close enough. Basically a lighter note about his life and how he turned into the man and the musician that we all know him as. The Beatles are one of my favorite bands. A lot of people either really love them or they really hate them, almost like, I guess, a 1960s Nickelback, which I also love. I love Nickelback. But anyway, some of my favorite Beatles songs are Across the Universe. I love that one. And I Love Her. Strawberry Fields. I also love In My Life. That's probably one of my favorites. And also some of the songs that each member did on their own, like their solo songs that they did on their own. But they were one of my favorite bands as a teenager. I would draw pictures of some of their songs or illustrated. I had a Abbey Road poster, and I really wanted to see when, I think, Cirque du Soleil did some rendition of the Beatles, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember when, but they did something with the Beatles music, and I just thought it was really cool. I memorized a lot of their lyrics, and ironically, I think this year Paul McCartney, I think it was this year, published a book called The Lyrics, if that's the title. So I may be reviewing that one either this year or next year sometime soon. But before I get into the book, let me tell you a little bit about the author, or the commenter, Tim Hill. I actually couldn't find a great biography about Tim Hill. I really searched. I tried to find a Wikipedia. I tried to click on his little Amazon link, but the only things I could find out about him was he has written about 4 to 5 books about the Beatles. So if you liked this book, then you'll probably like his other books as well. The Daily Mail, of course, is a very popular newspaper. This book was published in 2007, so it's over a decade old. It's almost reaching to 20 years old, but it's still very, very well put together. This book is laid out in different sections and different chapters based off of the decades or certain time periods. So chapter 1 is 1960 to 1963. Chapter 2 is 1964. 1965. Chapter 4, 1966 through 67. 5 is 68 to 69. 6 is 70 to 71. And 7 is 72 to 2004. What I really enjoy about this book is they go straight into the photographs. You don't even have to read anything. It's just so chock full of photographs that really capture the transformation of the Beatles. So it starts off, first photograph, that's the cover. They're like, oh, here we go. But I really like this one. They start off so innocent, just boys. Some boys from Liverpool. If you don't know any of the Beatles, if you don't know their names, this one is Ringo Starr. I can't remember what Ringo's actual name is. I just, Ringo Starr. He's a drummer. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. Ringo and Paul are the only ones who are still alive. John, unfortunately, tragically, this is the 43rd anniversary of his tragic death. And then George, I can't remember if he passed away in the 80s or 90s, but all of their lives, they did music in their own way, shape, and form. But this is how the world was introduced to them, as bright-eyed boys, just like, good, clean boy haircuts. And oh, how they changed. Oh, how they changed over the years. So, let's start with the introduction. It says, the Beatles were one of the greatest success stories of the 1960s. 4 hugely talented young men formed a group that rapidly brought pop stardom and international acclaim. Wherever they went, thousands of fans flocked in adoration. At concerts, the hysteria and screams were so loud, nobody could actually hear them playing. That's kind of annoying for me. They were to produce a unique quality of sound, of music, that would prove to be timeless and respected for generations to come. After mastering the 3-minute, 3-chord sad glad pop song, they then moved on to perform increasingly innovative and sophisticated pieces that continued to hold the world's attention and admiration. That is true. The Beatles have songs for almost every age. They have songs for almost every feeling. I think when they began, they started off with songs that were kind of predictable, but then as they matured and grew in their music and learned more about themselves as individuals, you could really see the transformation, the creativity that they tried to place in their songs. The curiosity and experimentation of instruments and concepts that some people weren't comfortable with at the time, as you will see as we go through this book. So they started off at the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and they released From Me to You. Do I know that song? I'm writing a letter. I think I did a picture of that, but I don't remember. Their first #1 in April 1963. By the close of that year, they had enjoyed 18 weeks at #1, and Beatlemania had entered the English language. Their first album, Please Please Me, had reached the top of the British charts in May of the same year and did not move until it was replaced by their second, With the Beatles, 7 months later. And then it just goes on and on and on and on. Then it says their last concert was held in August 1966 in Candlestick Park, San Francisco, and by 1968, cracks were beginning to show in the harmony of the band. During the decade, the Fab Four had produced music that was unique and timeless. The quality of their work is still held with respect and awe today. They left a legacy which will still be treasured by generations to come, unlike many other bands. Produced a bubble that is unlikely ever to burst. Images of the Beatles is a collection of famous or fabulous photographs from the archives of the Daily Mail taken by the Associated Newspapers photographers. Along with the detailed commentary, the pictures provide an insight into how 4 young men influenced an entire generation and beyond. So here's the beginning. 1960 to 1963. Fresh face, innocent, starting on their little adventure. Look at them. Ha ha ha. Oh, we're gonna see the transformation soon. So, here's their television debut. right here. It says above, October 17th, 1962. It says between lunchtime and evening slots at the Cavern Club, the Beatles make their TV debut on Granada's People and Places, performing Some Other Guy and Love Me Do. I'm sorry, they just look so innocent right here. They're just like, la, 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 la. And it said, the boys take a break from a hectic recording and performing schedule. The moderate success of Love Me Do meant that success beyond the Northwest region was far from guaranteed. In November 1962, an audition for BBC television received a lukewarm reception. 1963 would be the breakthrough year. So I guess they were supposed to do a cover of something, but they decided to do their own number, and that's what made them stand out. Sometimes it's not what you are or what you're doing, but where you are. Sometimes you just have to go where you're appreciated. You know, you can be a beautiful, beautiful fish, but you're never going to survive in a bird's nest. Like, it's impossible. It's not your environment. You gotta go where people will value you. And that's what they were starting to learn. So let's see. Some of my pictures, my favorite pictures. It says, right, oh shoot. I really liked this picture because it looks like they're always just singing. They look like they're having so much fun. Like, ha ha ha. I don't know who this is. Opposite, clowning with Morecambe and Wise during rehearsals for the comedy duo show, recorded in December 1963 and aired the following April. The boys donned boaters and striped jackets and crooned Moonlight Bay for a musical collaboration. Eric arrived in full Beatles regalia screaming, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, they're performing. And by this time, they're all like having similar hairstyles. Like, very uniform. Let us see. Then it says, hold on. The Beatles Christmas. Okay. This is a problem that you're going to see throughout this book as the author talks about the Beatles and their finances. So when they started off, they were just young kids. They didn't really know anything about how the music industry is working. They're just learning as they're going along. And all throughout this, people are just taking advantage of them. People are taking advantage of their music rights, their money, and just really sad. And they didn't find out till later, most of the time. So right here, it's Ringo, he's in some corduroy, Paul, John, and it says, oh, and here's George dancing with somebody. So it says opposite, George enjoying himself at a party following a gig at the Granada Cinema, East Ham. On the same day, November 9th, 1963, George signed a separate 5-year contract with Northern Songs. At the time, he was simply glad to get a publishing deal. He was dismissive of Don't Bother Me, which became the first Harrison song to be recorded by the groups when it was featured on with the Beatles. As the volume and quality of his output increased, he realized that in the contract, he had signed away ownership of his music. That is so sad. Let's move on to chapter 2. 1964. These are the Beatles in Paris. No. Yeah, in Paris. Beatles in Paris. Still on tour. In Paris, the Beatles attracted mild curiosity rather than the usual screaming mobs, because by that time, they would have like girls chasing them, like trying to grab them, all sorts of things. The lukewarm reception by the French fans was in marked contrast to their second appearance on Sunday night at the London Palladium. Just before they crossed the English Channel, they topped the bill again, this time for a fee of £1,000, 4 times the amount they received for their first appearance 3 months earlier. Then let's see. So, this is the Beatles over in, I think they're in Paris. The one bright note during their unhappy spell in Paris was the news that I Wanna Hold Your Hand had reached #1 in America, having allowed the previous singles to be released on the VJ and Swan labels. Capitol Records finally decided to throw their weight and some of their marketing budget behind a Beatles single. See how quickly things can change for you? If you're an artist and you're trying to just work, and get success, it could all change overnight. You see that on YouTube. People be like, oh my gosh, I just became famous overnight. I don't want to become famous overnight. Like, I don't want to be famous. And y'all can keep that. I want to be in some hedge witch in the wilderness, like with some electricity, of course. Ready to rock America. So, this is George Harrison and his parents. Look how little he looks like. He looks so innocent. He has a head full of hair, though. Like, dang. You got some hair on you, George. George's parents, Harold and Louise Harrison, helped with the packing as the Beatles prepared to crack America. Harold had wanted George to become an electrician. Louise was a music fan, and she encouraged George's aspirations. It was Louise who found the 3-pound 15S for George's first guitar. Is it 3 pounds or 315? I don't know. I don't know this currency, which he bought from a friend. So mom supported his dreams. Sometimes we have to take a risk on our children's dreams, like invest in your children's dreams, because it might start off with one way and end up in another career field. Like, they could have the gift of gab and end up being a professor or a talk show host. You just never know. You'd never know. My mom invested in my dreams. Like, she would put me in art. She would put me in writing classes. And I still do art and I still do writing. I still make my paintings and my drawings and all of that. So, invest in your children. Good job, George Harrison's mother. So, the Ed Sullivan Show. On the first Sullivan Show, aired on February 9th, 1964, the group sang 3 numbers at the start of the show: All My Loving, Till There Was You, and She Loves You. In the second half, they sang I Saw Her Standing There. I love that song. No, I'm not going to sing it. Before finishing with their Hot 100 #1, I Wanna Hold Your Hand. It wasn't an accomplished performance, although the sound balance wasn't perfect. It is said that during rehearsals, the sound console was marked with chalk, which was subsequently wiped off by a diligent cleaner. And this is them on the Ed Sullivan Show. I think they made multiple appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show, but don't quote me on that. I'm sorry if I'm taking the pictures away from you. I do apologize. I'll try to keep it slow. I don't want it to be an After Effects. So let us continue. Okay. Capitol Beatles. Even though they were now the hottest property in the pop music world, the Beatles were still just 4 Liverpool lads with no airs and graces. It was Epstein who liked the kudos of playing at prestigious venues such as Carnegie Hall. During a reception at the British Embassy in Washington, they showed they had little time for pomp and ceremony. They were particularly unimpressed when someone snipped a lock of Ringo's hair. No, that's not funny, because I've had people grab my hair, and that pissed me off. That's why I wear my hair in a scarf, because I've had several people grab my hair out and about, and just... So, I'm sorry, Ringo. John stormed out after firing off a volley of explicitives. I guess that's just the price of fame that they don't talk about. Like, when you really think about how young they were like 19, 20, thrown early 20s, thrown into the thrusts of fame, thrown into the den of freaking beasts. And they went from having regular life, playing in the local tavern and having fun being kids, and now you're just global superstars. That's crazy. And sometimes it's hard to deal with that. It's like some people cannot deal with that, and they literally physically don't survive or mentally don't survive. But the Beatles, I think, were one of the few successful groups. Like, when you think about it, they were successful all around. Like, they had a lot of longevity. They weren't just one-hit wonders. They stayed. And they were even successful on their own doing solo projects. So, how amazing how they transformed. Champions of America. Oh, I love this picture. It's so... It shows how small they are. It says Cassius Clay was just a contender when he met the world's undisputed top group on February 18th, 1964. I'll show it to you again. A few days later, Clay became #1 in his field too after beating champion Sonny Liston. Like most people, the Beatles thought Liston would win and agreed to the photo shoot with the brash young challenger only after the champion declined. So, they look like they're having the time of their life. So, John has a sign that says 22 years old. Ringo has a sign that says 6'3". George is holding one that says 218 pounds. And then my favorite sign is Paul's sign, which says greatest. I love it. I love it. It says, fan club secretary Bettina Rose helps George with 52 sacks of mail, which arrive on his 21st birthday. February 25th, 1964. Jelly baby candies were a popular present following reports that George had a weakness for them. Louise Harrison sent a request, his mom, to the BBC to play the miracle song Shop Around to celebrate her son's big day. It was played on the radio on Saturday, February 22nd, the day the Beatles returned from America. Look at George. You only 21. Put that cigar down. Do it, George. Oh, look who we got here. Oh, wait, no. Wrong girl. Hold up, wrong girl. Patty and George. You know, the infamous Patty Boyd. The makeup scenes for A Hard Day's Night saw Patty Boyd running a comb through George's hair. I'm sure you ran a lot of combs through a lot of people's hair, ma'am. But I'm not hating on you. I'm not hating on you, Patty. You good. Patty was a model who worked with director Richard Lester previously on an advertisement for chips. She and George hit it off immediately and were soon a serious item. She's so cute. Look at her. All have their little hairs or anything. Now, what's really the only thing about this book that, like, confused me is, like, sometimes they would switch pictures of people. I'm like, did they get a new girlfriend? Like, what's going on? And now, Ringo's girlfriend or wife, I think it was Maureen, I think. Now, her looks switched so many times throughout this book, I didn't even recognize that it was her. And I think because she had on, like, different makeup. But I was like, is that her or is this another girl? So, let's continue. Opposite, filming the nightclub scene for A Hard Day's Night. I like how they did a lot of, they ventured into movies and different things. But I don't know what John is wearing. What are you wearing, John? What is going on? They might have set the stage for, or maybe during that time, like where the artists were, the singers were also in movies and all these things. Or maybe that was already there. Maybe that started in the 20s. I don't really know. After the end of the silent films and all of that. This picture right here is creepy. This was a publicity shot for Madame Tussauds Waxworks. I just think they got the Beatles looking like some corpses. But, maybe it was just the material that they had then. Like, what is going on with Ringo? Like, why do they make Ringo look older than he is? Okay, that's kind of creepy. But now they got wax figures that look like, I'm like, is this wax or is this them? Like I don't know. This right here is John and Cynthia. So Cynthia was his first wife before Yoko Ono. And they had one son together. John Charles Julian. He was born April 8th, 1963, I suppose. When the Beatles played the Ed Sullivan Show in February, the screen flashed up, "Sorry girls, he's married," when John was in a close-up. That didn't stop him leading the life of excess money associated with pop superstars. What's so interesting about the Beatles is, like, it's like you can read about them and there's just never-ending things to read about. You can read about the lyrics. You can read about their relationships with one another, their relationships with their romantic partners, their family members. Like, it's just never ending. It's so interwoven and intertwined. And every time I read something new, I just see a new aspect of the Beatles or each member or why they became the way they became. I love this photograph. Princess Margaret, she was so pretty. But I can see why they were a favorite of Princess Margaret, because Princess Margaret loved to hang out with the hipster type of people. She liked hanging out with the creative type. I mean, her sister was okay, but, like, you know, the queen had to run the country and all of that. But Margaret, I feel, is more of a free spirit. So this is her. It says, at the premiere of A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles are introduced to Princess Margaret, who was a big fan of their music. Despite the fact that the movie was shot in less than 2 months on a budget of less than £200,000, it won rave reviews from critics as well as fans. It grossed $8 million in the first week, a huge return on United Artists' modest investment. And what's interesting is, like, how they started off like this, and then near the end of their careers, they became more political. Like they started going against the government and all of that different things. So I just think that's it's kind of funny, especially John. Especially John. He always wanted to do his own little thing. Let's see. 1965. So this right here, Ringo gets married. He gets married on February 11, 1965. His bride was 18-year-old Maureen Cox, a former hairdresser whom he had met at the Cavern Club. So this is what she looks like, and I swear, like, she appeared throughout the book in certain places, and I didn't even realize it was her, because she looked so different. Was this Maureen? No. Let me see if I can find it. She just, I guess her face. Okay. Like right here, I guess it was just like the makeup. Yeah. She looks like a punk rocker. I see you, Marie. That was his first wife. Hold on. He got married again. I'm sorry. So this is getting too long. I'm sorry. Okay, let's flip. And George ties the knot with Patty Boyd. Actually, Patty looks really cute right here. She was one of the, cuter little girlfriends with her little gap in her teeth. I see you, Patty. Wasn't she involved with, Eric? It wasn't Eric Clapton. It was somebody. But apparently she inspired all of these different men to write songs inspired by her, which I think is kind of cool. Do what you do, girl. To make music that lasts a lifetime. So this over here is in the 60s, like after 65. And this is Yoko. It says, introducing Yoko. I think she looks really pretty right there. November 9th, 1966. John meets conceptual artist Yoko Ono for the first time at a preview of her exhibition at London's Indica Gallery. He was initially dismissive of the exhibits, which included an apple on a stand bearing the legend, Apple. He gradually warmed to the avant-garde ideas. Another exhibit invited the viewer to hammer in a nail, which John volunteered to do. On being told it would cost 5 shillings, John said he would knock in an imaginary nail and hand over an imaginary 5 shillings. I know a lot of people, like, there'll be people that are like, she ruined the Beatles, or she destroyed all. I feel like, personally, just from reading about John's life, and even like some of the things of him wanting to be an artist, I actually think she matched his crazy. I don't want to say he crazy, but that's the only word I can think of right now. She matched his crazy. She was an artist. He was an artist. They both liked pushing the envelopes. They both played off of each other. That's why you could see like the blending where they would have uniform clothes, and where she begins, I end, and we never end. We're together. We are one. I can see that with them because they were both essentially the same type of person. They're essentially the same type of artist, and they didn't give an F what anybody thought. Now, it was messy how they got together. I will tell you that. It was messy, but I really think that for him, for his type of personality, that was his soulmate. Like Cynthia, was his soulmate for a certain period of time until he started to transform into something that not Cynthia, was it? Was that her? Yeah, Cynthia. Until she just was like, I can't take this anymore. It's hard being in relationships with creatives sometimes. And I'm a creative. I'm not that difficult, but I am like challenging. But I've dated creatives, and that has been extremely a challenge for me. So I get how two creatives being in a partnership, even with the Beatles being creatives, like there were times of clashing. There are times where like they didn't see eye to eye, but they had to get the project done, or they had to go with what they felt, the energy that they had created in their own souls. So for a long time, Paul is with Jane Asher, but that's not who he ended up. I don't think he ended up marrying her. He ended up marrying a girl named Linda Eastman, and she already had a child from a previous marriage, and they started a family together. But I'm getting too ahead of myself. There's so many photographs in here. I wish I could just go on and show you all of them, but it's just so freaking long. I didn't know this book was going to be this long until I was in it. Let's see. So at a certain point, the Beatles met Maharishi. George was getting into not esoteric, existentialism or Hinduism, and what's it, Hinduism? Transcendental meditation or something of that nature. Hold up. I'm trying to find it. Oh my God. So enlightenment in India. So this is Paul and Jane Asher. They're flying to India to go study transcendental meditation under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. So they're on the plane, going on the plane to go there. I'm wondering if Across the Universe was inspired by that. Because he says in the song, Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing, Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change. You know what Yoko did have some fly outfits. I will give her that. Very strange singing voice, but that was John's girl, so that's who he loved. Where is George Harrison? And it says, George with members of the Radha Krishna temple, with whom he has the unlikeliest hit single of the year, the Hare Krishna mantra, reached number 12 in the UK. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and be happy. A bookmark. St. Louis Hare Krishna Temple. But yeah, I really like George's music as he developed into what he became. Very, very powerful songs. Very timeless writings and music. I'm trying to think what song of his that I really like, but I can't think of one right now. He also formed a band later on, or no, I don't think he formed a band, but it was a combination of him, Bob Dylan, Petty. I don't know the first man's name. Did I say Roy Orbison? But they formed a group called the Traveling Wilburys. And I really liked their song End of the Line. And if you don't know who Roy Orbison is, I think that's what his name was. He's the one that sang Pretty Woman and some other songs. That is very beautiful voice. So if you look at the comments on some of the videos where it's like when all of the grade A students of the class form a study group together. So 1970 to 1971, Yoko and John. You can see like people growing beards. And there's all of these clashes going on between the Beatles and money and just little petty arguments. You know how families can be like, you don't see eye to eye, so you don't talk for a while. But eventually, they just kind of got over it. They just let life. It seemed like the book implies that there was a feud between the Lennons and the McCartneys or the Harrisons, and this is like so much division. Paul and his family, Yoko. I didn't know Yoko had a child from another marriage, too. But the only thing that irritated me about this book... Oh, and then Paul McCartney formed a band called The Wings, or him and some other people formed a band called The Wings. But what irritated me about this book is that from hold on. It was like 19 something to 2004. 1972 to 2004. They literally just gloss over John's death. And I don't know why. And I'll show you what I mean. They don't make any mention of John's death until it says Ringo marries again. So Ringo got married to this lady, Barbara Bach. It was just 4 months since John had been gunned down by a crazed fan outside his New York apartment on December 8th, 1980. Like, I would have liked it if you showed how the world reacted to John's death. It's just like, let's just skip over it. I'm like, look, y'all don't have to be that disrespectful. Yes, it was a tragedy. Yes, his life ended in a violent way, but you could have shown like how people responded to it. You could have shown like memorials, like makeshift memorials or something. So I don't know. Maybe they just wanted this to be like a coffee table book where they don't want you to be upset or sad about anything, but it happened. So put some respect on his life. Don't know. But I love how every decade the clothes are changing, their hair is changing, it's getting wild, looking quintessential 80s or 90s. Think of pattern of the silly love songs. But yeah, I haven't shown you all the pictures because there's literally too many pictures to go through all of them. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry I talked so long. I should have pre-picked the pictures before, but if you love the Beatles, if you like their songs, comment in the comments below and tell me what songs that you like of them. And if they had some type of influence on your life, your music, or whatever it is you do, just share it in the comments below. So talk to you later, everyone. Bye-bye.